Okay. Writing poetry in a nutshell, I get it. But this is only the preliminary to the real video. But if you want writing poetry in a nutshell, then do what I did. Take a pencil and start writing. Take a pencil and start writing. And that's then, in a nutshell, writing poetry. You take a pencil and then you start writing. Okay? I know this is very annoying, but that's as simple as you can have it in a nutshell. You take a pencil and you start writing, and whatever comes out of it, out of yourself, through the pencil, onto the paper, is then you. And then you have to live with it. I cannot, for the love of it, change the way I create things. This is what artists know as letting go. You let go of all concepts of how your art or your poetry should be, and you simply write down what wants to come out. This is you communicating to yourself what you are feeling or what you have seen. All you can do then is accept it and hone the skill and try to understand what is being communicated. You may even feel that, well, that's never me. Well, live with it. Then it's called channeling, right? Writing poetry does not happen by thinking about it. It's by feeling your way towards the poem. That's like two lovers, right, that meet each other, but that know if we would just have sex, it would just be a calamity. So you have to feel your way forward. Imagine you're blind, which ignorance is. Ignorance is basically being blind. Imagine you are blind and you're in a room and there's no light, but yeah, you're blind anyway. And now you're trying to look for, the screwdriver. For whatever reason, right? You're just looking for the screwdriver. But you also have flipped over a whole bucket full of needles. Or let's say there's a scorpion. Whatever, there's something and you need to be very careful. So you kind of look at what is, wherever you are, and then you say, a thermos bottle standing tall, my shoulders ache, I've got blue balls. You see, a thermos bottle standing tall, my shoulders ache, I've got blue balls. So this is 3 lines. No, a thermos bottle standing tall. You can even separate it and then it gets another line of meaning. A thermos bottle standing tall, my shoulders ache, I've got blue balls. And that's basically how I feel right now. I could also say, now you could say, be specific and say the microphone, or you could just say a microphone. So you can also distance yourself and make it a bit more riddle-ish. So you say, a microphone recording a voice. Yeah, okay, but you see what I mean? You have to feel yourself into this. A microphone recording an ear caressed by voice. The truth is that everything's a choice. You see, and this is the depth that a lot of people will be missing, if you look at AI art. If you do it all by yourself, this part that everything is a choice is just something I have realized in my own life by looking at what is and what people are doing, and that people always have all these kinds of excuses. So you look at what is, and then whatever you see on the surface is just what gets you going into the creation. But once you get going and you get better and better and you have more experience and you realize what your style actually is, you will start adding depth into it. So you simply have to keep going. I just did it and I liked it. And all I can say again is that I put all my all the poetry that I wrote is in the Crazy Wisdom books, but it's also on my website. So just check it out. This is just something that's supposed to get you going. Or you just like poetry, you don't actually want to write it yourself, you just like the idea that others do it, and it's okay for you to just read it and then dwell on it and try to understand it, where the poet is coming from. I don't usually read a lot of poetry from others because I like to keep my mind clean. But I do read stories. I like reading books. So a poem is also kind of like a story. Screens made up of colors. Keyboards used to type. Now you can just stick with, the truth is, it's still empty. Life happens outside. I cannot help it. It just comes out like this. And I could, if I would feel like it and I would have the energy and the motivation, I could sit there and write poem after poem after poem. But the thing with me is that I simply get bored. If I keep doing the same thing, I just get bored. Maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius. I just like flowing. I don't know, man. I just discover so many things. I have this about versatility. You can rap a poem. You can sing a poem. You can just say a poem. You can just read a poem. And you can do so many things with poetry. And the better you get, so the more you work on your skills as a poet, the more intricate what you're trying to express is going to get. Because what you're expressing is more or less always the same. But what changes is your perception of what is. But ultimately, you're always trying to express whatever you have in your center. And the way I communicate my center seems to be very different from what other people are communicating in their center. And now this is in a nutshell. Ultimately, if you want it, you're gonna keep going. I started and I liked it. And there's one poem that I chickened out on rehearsing that just keeps following me. It was one of the first ones I did. I just had a really intense dream. I woke up and later that day, I don't know, I was still smoking a lot. I stopped now, apparently, maybe forever, who knows. And I wrote down this poem. It just came out of me. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm gonna write a poem. I just sat down, I smoked a doobie, without tobacco, just pure cannabis, and suddenly I just wanted to write this poem, and I had no choice but to just write it. If creativity wants you, it's gonna get you some way, and then you cannot chicken out anymore. And so this poem is... oh wow, now I have to dig deep. I saw a man in wrinkles that finely carved his face. His figure tall above us all, he seemed to rule the place. He spread a mood of hatred directed towards me. My form it felt uncertain. My heart felt jealousy. I think that's it. I'm not sure. You see, some parts are missing. The first part I always get. But anyway, it's on my website. You see, now I say it's gonna stick with me, but I know I've written it. And if I would sit down, I'd somehow probably get it. But also, my life is about letting go. So I never really cling to my creations. I just keep going, and there's just always more stuff. Because as I keep changing, I saw a man in wrinkles that finely lined his face. His figure tall above us all, he seemed to rule the place. He spread a mood of hatred directed towards me. My form it felt uncertain, my heart felt jealousy. Now I think it's coming. I think there's something in between, but at the end is the angry man was me. I know it in my heart. To be completely free, I need embrace that part. I saw a man in wrinkles that finely lined his face. His figure tall above us all, he seemed to rule the place. He spread a mood of hatred directed towards me. My form it felt uncertain. My heart felt jealousy. Yeah, maybe it was just 3 lines. Wait a second. Oh my god. You know, this is as much nutshell as you're gonna get from me. I'm just saying, like, don't pester me with specificness. I'm just saying, don't pester me with this. Because I'm a scatterbrain. I don't like everything like completely set into whatever. I am the way that I am. And too much thinking about stuff just takes it's like you need a bit of fun in this. And that's just what this is just the stuff that just comes out of me. Don't ask me this stupid question, how to write poetry. I mean, what are you even talking about? I mean, you just take a pencil, you just start writing, man. I mean, if you're uncertain, this is always where it gets to. If I start explaining things into detail, I just get really, really angry. And you don't want to be around then anymore, because I don't have the time or the energy to give you everything like on a platter. I mean, you want to learn poetry, just take a damn pencil and write poetry, and then don't bother me with this anymore. Just do it. Do it. Okay? I mean, this is as simple as you're ever gonna get it. And then you just go to my website and you just go to, click on the menu or whatever, I don't know from where you're accessing, and then you just go to poetry, and then you just go to contents, and it says a dream. Yeah, and that's the first poem I basically ever wrote. And it says, this poem is quite special to me. It has great meaning because it came out of me after my first spiritual dream, so to speak. This is the first time I met a part of myself in a dream, and therefore a great lesson. Recognizing yourself is one of the most important parts of your spiritual journey, and it begins with discovering what is on the inside. Now here comes it. I saw a man in wrinkles that finely lined his face, his figure tall above us all, he seemed to rule the place. He spread a mood of hatred directed towards me, my form it felt uncertain, my heart felt jealousy. Come he did by night, and with him he brought friends. See I did by light, learning never ends. Aha. The ugly man was me, I know it in my heart. To be completely free, I need embrace that part. Here you go, and this was in a nutshell, right? But now I'm gonna explain this a bit. I don't know, nothing is really in depth. You just take what you need and then you just do it yourself, right? But if I just sit around, I'm not like that kind of a teacher. I teach flow. And if I want to teach flow to you, then you just have to find you and let go. Let go of any kind of teaching. And that's the message. That's what you should listen to. Just do you and stop pestering people for giving you what you want. You just have to do it yourself. There's no guarantee that I will keep writing poems. I mean, this is also a drag if you don't get it, because it's effort, and there are other things that I would like to do, like writing books and stuff. I mean, there are things I'd rather do than do this for the rest of my life. There are other things that are much more important. I'm just doing this because at the moment that's what I'm doing. But my plan is to do much less of this, because I don't actually give a crap about this society. They can all go to hell. I don't give a crap about this society, but I care about nature and I care about the people that I know. And that's why I just make an effort to stay alive and find beauty, right? And that's all I can tell you about this. If you're not like, I think if I don't write poems I'm gonna die, don't even try, man. Wait till you get your, like Job's message, like if everything you have is being taken away, then you'll write poems. But before that, forget it. You actually need to be in shit, right? And in order to survive, you just write poems. So you can say, hey, I'm doing something, right? I want to stay. And that's the message of Spirited Away. You gotta work to stay alive, right? This is part of my sadhana. So if you get that, then pick up a pen and start writing. But it's as much a prison, it's as much a hell as it's a heaven, because it's always both. You just learn to deal with it. It's not easier, my life is not easier than anyone else's. I'm suffering a lot, and possibly even more. That's hard to say. We're all suffering. You just learn to suffer with style, right? So you don't end up in some kind of dead corner. You actually contribute in the way that you can. You transform, you transcend, you let go, you move forward, away from industry towards nature. And that's all I got. That's all you're gonna hear from me in hours of explanation. That's basically it. Have a go. 19 minutes of nutshell. I mean, that's not even nutshell anymore. That's already, it's like, what? Just write a book about it. Yeah, no thank you. Here you go. This is what I recorded earlier. Cheerio. Oh. 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 All right. Writing poetry.
I mean, this is like 101, this is beginner's class. But, I mean, your goal is to get to advanced. So maybe you've been writing poetry, maybe you've had ideas, oh, could be so nice, you know. What if there's a little Schiller or Goethe, you know, hiding inside of me, or Herman Melville? Because what is poetry? So poetry is basically word art. Poetry means you are describing what you feel through words. And that is what art always is, which is why, you know, it's going to be very hard for AI to reproduce human emotions, because there is no human in it. The only thing you could say is that in terms of making digital art, you could say the human who is working with the program that is making art learns to use the program very well, and then he will stand out amongst AI artists and gets very good at it. And then he may enlighten as well, and he may fiddle around, because you can, for example, feed an AI engine, probably, you know, I've never tried, with photography you've taken yourself. But then the question is, why not just leave it up to your mind to bring it all together? Because that's what I'm doing. I'm living my life, I'm making experiences, I test myself, right? This is new furniture for the garden, for the house that I'm living in, and it's coming from my parents, and they said we don't want it anymore. And then they wanted to bring it with a car, and I just said, yeah, forget it. You know, they tried to argue, and today the weather was nice. I had a feeling, you know, at least somebody's gonna be at home, and so I just went there, and I just said, here I am, you know. And then I disassembled 2 chairs, and now I'm carrying them. So if you think about writing poetry, you know, you need something, you need a vision, you need an insight, you need an experience, you need a feeling that you would like to give shape to. So let's say you want to be a poet, but that's a better way of saying it is you feel like there's poetry inside of you, okay? So you're part of the poem. So you don't write poems about random shit. I mean, you make an experience, you find yourself somewhere in your life, and you wish to express it. But you also wish to get better. But you're drawing from a feeling. You're not taking from others. You know, you try to just be yourself. So you also stop reading other people's poetry. I assume that's the place you find yourself in. You've probably been reading lots of poetry, but you want to make the jump into writing it. Yeah, okay, so what is going to go into your poetry? Now, you can be a really fancy poet and just try to hide what you're actually feeling, or you're just honest about it and you say, I'm carrying my luggage, this is really hard. Okay, now you have to ask yourself, is it gonna be rhymey? Do you want rhymes? Because there's also poetry that actually does not rhyme. Because what to me poetry is, it's not about the rhyme, it's just about the sing-song, and it's about the depth. So you also want to sit with concepts you have in your mind. Who am I as a human? How was my upbringing? How did, you know, early schooling make me feel? And this is what you need to express. What makes you sad? You know, there's the kind of like the melancholy You know, the tristesse of modern civilization, the lacking of spirit. And that's then gonna be your mission. You wanna bring spirit to people who have none. And that's why you want to write poetry and share it. That's the mission of a true artist. He looks at all the suffering and he turns it into something people can relate to. Because if you're feeling like this, you can count on it. That there's a part in everyone who's feeling like this. Everyone who's running around trying to act like, yeah, I'm a materialist. There's always a part in everyone who actually likes nature. They're just afraid to admit it because that's your mother. We've been raping our mother. We take the things that she gives us and we invest these things into machines that we can use to destroy and then create toxic stuff. So the first thing, this is quite heavy, but I'm training my left side. So one goal of you as a poet, you want to make this as holistic as you can. So maybe you, like I was, have been raised, you know, like right-handed. So people came and told you, you have to write with your right hand. And everything you did, henceforth, was about, so there's a dead mouse. All I see, okay, now, you know, you see it's hard to just make it in the spur of the moment, but this is also like freestyle. Okay, now let's capture the moment. I just saw a dead mouse. There's like some kind of like horse apples. There's a stream. I do hear birds whisper. Dead mouse, or make it mice. Dead mice upon the pavement. Apples made by a horse. Birds that chirp of freedom and streams that carry hope, or streams that keep you moist. So now you can see if that actually rhymed, but I don't know, sometimes I write poems and somehow they rhyme. I just cannot explain why. So the poem, you know, it's like I'm dealing with something and I want to express it in poetry. So I can express things in poetry, but I can also make a sketch. I can take a pencil and I can draw something, but I can also take like, you know, like paint and then paint with my fingers on canvas or something. You know, I can also take like chalk and make art on the streets. You know, I can do all kinds of things. You know, I can write, I can read. I mean, you can make art by writing a book, and then this book is art and it deals with something. So you can say, you know, what is Lord of the Rings dealing with? Well, clearly like imbalance, war, concepts we find in the industry, hacking shit to bits for apparently no reason. No, that's like, what is the movie The Tree of Life dealing with? You know, also, we need guidance. You know, what's God? You know, why do children, you know, are disrespectful with, you know, why do they like kill frogs with sticks and shit? You know, that's a really important question. You know, what's Lord of the Flies about? So what poetry, like true poetry, is working with is actually the underlying concepts of what you perceive every day and what makes you feel like you're missing something. And as you try to express what you see every day, right? you get better at it. So I simply started to make music, to make art, and I just published it, all of it. I kept nothing back. Okay, I may have sometimes occasionally deleted things, but most of it I just shot out there. Because what also writing poems is about, you know, you can capture the beauty of destruction, you know? I mean, a dead mouse, I can see beauty in that. You know, there's always a perspective. If you see the mouse that had a good life and then suddenly was dead, you know, there's beauty in this. And that's like your grandma just died and you're like, oh no, she's gone. Yeah, but think of all the moments you had with her. I mean, I sometimes get really melancholy when I think about, yeah, my parents are gonna at some point leave. Yeah, but that's life. You know, you knew that when you were born. Now you're just trying to pretend it's really bad, but it's not. It's just the way it is, right? So, you know, my hand is pulling wagons. I'm empty now, I'm full. The harvest may bring apples. I recently watched Krull. Krull is a movie. So you just take random stuff sometimes, but it's kind of like fits into each other, right? So the more you rhyme, the better it gets. And there are poems that I will possibly never forget, but sometimes they're kind of like fading away a little. So there's one rooftop poetry. If you go onto my website, you know, if you don't want to buy a book, because I have published probably, I have all, I mean, at this stage, I'm still working on Crazy Wisdom 3, but by the time you see this, it's already published. These are 3 books that deal with in-depth, like poetry, you know, short stories, and just like diary entries. You know, this could be something for you to get going with, but also artwork. I cannot say how it's gonna look in print because I never checked it. I never had the money to, you know, buy my own books. Plus, they're not for me. But all I'm trying to show you is that, you know, there's always more. And no matter what happens in your life, let's say like the most dreadful experience, you know, your parents died in a car crash and your child, you know, was dissolved by acid or something because it wasn't some kind of like industrial whatever, and then, you know, it just died. And now you're all alone and it's like the worst thing, and you lost both your legs and somebody smashed your teeth in, and you're like, you know, that's the worst place you could find yourself in. Well, you still got hands, so start writing poetry. And if you ain't got hands, right, you've got a mouth, you can just say poetry. I mean, even for people who feel like they're too weak to write, well, then say the poetry, capture it, share it, or possibly keep it to yourself. I like sharing at the moment, but if you do start sharing, keep focus on what you love doing. Because if you do art, you need to have something to give. And, you know, if people follow you or not should never matter. But I'm clearly also pulling this card and filming myself because I'm also showing, hey, you know, that's the way I live. But I would have done it anyway. This is just my way of saying, yeah, it's good to sit around and do art and write poems, but I also need to have a strong physiology. And why do I say that? Because if you're dabbling in art, if you're an artist, you deal with suffering on an intense level. This is like, you know, I'm sinking into depression all the time. And so I have so many things I can do, I just do them. And that's all kind of art. And all that is always finding the perspective that helps me to continue. on my journey through life. And this is then basically everything I've done is like a diary, right? It's like it's written, it's filmed. I don't give a shit what other people do, because all they do is they just stand around and they look at you like, who's that guy? Why is he barefoot? Why is he carrying this? Why doesn't he just take a car? So you understood something. There's something you feel like you understand and you want to express it. And then the question is, how can you see yourself writing poetry with a smile, right? You know, when I do something like this and I pull this card and I'm barefoot and I'm dressed the way I am, you know what makes me smile? Blowing people's minds that think they're doing well driving around in a car, but they never had to struggle. They just have this car, they drive everywhere with it, but they're too weak. If they would want to do this, they'd just complain all the time, like all this kind of stuff, because they like their comforts. Well, I've seen where comfort gets you, and I'm an emotional being. I need stability, and nobody could give me emotional stability. So I simply said, okay, you know, it's just gonna get worse from here on. Because the more people believe that the way to go is like technology, and now then it's AI. No, we don't even have to make art anymore. You know, AI is a distraction. Rather learn to rhyme. There's riddles in your mind. All you need is time. And time you have if you are willing to sacrifice the things that keep you occupied in the moment. So what you can do is, let's say you look at your life, you know there's a part in you that wants to write poetry, but every time it gets to it, you watch porn instead. But you don't even realize this anymore, but you realize that something is keeping you from actually writing poetry. You know, it's like you used to cycle, you know, with your own might, and now you have an electric bike, and then suddenly you don't get out of the cycling anymore what you used to get out of it. And plus it's just a waste of time, because, you know, it's just like, what? You're never reaching your full potential. And so that's the same thing I was struggling with, you know, like the porn thing. You know, I will never ever say again that I'm over the hill unless I have for 20 years just kept myself busy enough to never watch porn again. Because if you masturbate, you know, you're just not busy enough. It's a problem when you're alone at home in seclusion. You know, who are you gonna give your energy to? That's a good question. So poems is one way of getting back to yourself. So every time you feel like, you know, instead of being miserable, you just focus on writing poetry. So instead of, you know, hating life, you just, you know, start to express that with love, and then you get better at it, and then you don't have to share it all. What you can do is you collect these poems, but you keep going with the intention of getting better. And then what you do in the end is you put it all into a book, and then you publish it, you know, self-publishing. And then you've got your, you know, that's your thing towards an passive income. But you cannot force people. You know, what I believe is you should never do is pay money for advertisement. That's the one rule, because it's gonna just, you know, as soon as there's like publishers involved and all that kind of stuff, for me it was very clear, I just want to do it by myself. The people have to like it. And if they like it, you know, then they can accept it, you know, and then it's okay. But I don't want to like push myself onto people because I believe that it's better to just let them figure it out for themselves. And that's why I don't have to like, I mean, there's some people who are so desperate for likes and followers because they think, you know, that's what matters. Because they actually do poetry or make art because they want people to like them. I like myself. I like what I'm doing. I'm sometimes a little afraid that people will stop, or people, yeah, what stop? I mean, right? So I realize I just have to keep going. And I'm writing poetry, although everything in my life is exactly probably the way it should be. But it's not that I have the things where I thought, you know, I would have them a year ago. Because every time you think, you know, success is just around the corner. You know, tomorrow I'm gonna be together with the love of my life and stuff like this. But here I am still on my own, having no hope and no faith that I will ever see this woman again. That, you know, at least for some time inspired me to keep going. But, you know, sometimes it's best to just remember that what you're doing is also something that's coming out of yourself. So, you know, I devote my stuff to nature because whatever women are, you know, the best expression I found for that is, yeah, I mean, they're kind of like an expression of nature, right? They're like the feminine, you know, it's like whatever at the other half, whatever, you know, I cannot say. But all I know is that I cannot really teach you how to do poetry because my style is unique. And so your style is unique because you don't want to copy me, you want to find your style. You want to stop pretending like you're somebody else. You want to say, that's me. And when somebody comes and picks on it, you say, well, I never asked for your opinion. So I never ask for people's opinions. Sometimes I do, but then what they say, in a sense, is irrelevant. Because sometimes I do the opposite of what they think I should do, simply because my feeling tells me that that's what I should be doing. Because everyone kind of also speaks in riddles. And so I have no intention of expressing what I'm feeling or seeing exactly that people could understand it, because if you're too stupid to understand my poetry, well then you just have to learn language. You know, I cannot teach you everything there is about communication because I have like several years of head start. You know, I have hours of suffering and solitude. You know, I have hours, days of hiking barefoot. I have an iron will because I wanted to be strong for the people that I love in a way. Right, I wanted to stay alive because I could see myself leave, but then I realized, well, what would this mean for my parents, for everyone I know? If I leave, something's gonna be missing. So I realized I want to give strength. I want to do justice to my name, and I want to do what I can to help nature and to also advertise a different way of life. So this is like being in between, right? This is like being in between. You know, I'm using what I have, I'm showing what I got, But the only thing is like, it's just me, right? It's just me. You know, the only thing I have, you know, the only thing I'll ever have is, you know, now I don't know. You know, I also feel like I need time for poetry. But at the same time, I'm writing so many poems sometimes in my mind. It's a bit annoying, to be honest, because that's what I had also with taking pictures. You know, I have so much creative potential because I have reduced everything else that I'm simply also looking for ways to stop creating all of this stuff, because I mean, I'm already more than a year, you know, in advance with creating all this content, and that's kind of insane. But now I have enough of a head start that in the meantime I can simply keep going. So this is something I had to do anyway, and I'm just talking about poetry because you clearly seem to want to know something about that. And so here you go. Poetry is something you have to take the time for. You know, if I have a problem and there's a word and I want to understand it, then I look at the etymology. So I was struggling to understand what the word Shelob, that's the spider from the Lord of the Rings, and I wanted to understand how he came up with the name. So you look at Shelob, then you get it, okay, she's a female, but what is lob? And then I looked up the word lob, and then what lob means in its, you know, the most commonly accepted, you know, what people remember of its original meaning is to throw something in a high arc. But if you look at the etymology, the source of the word, you realize, oh wow, lob means a pendulum, like hanging, something like a weight hanging on a string, a pendulum. And then you see the spider as a she and a lob. So how long did he work on that name till he had it? There's like so much meaning in there. And wow, this is heavy. I'm glad I didn't put on more. I have to do it one more time. And the other thing is, sometimes you realize how negative the words are being connotated that we use today. We say, hey, the word animosity. It's like, if you look it up, the first explanation in the Oxford Dictionary is, you know, something like being hostile. You know, it's like you're being hostile, you're being angry or something. And then you're looking up the word etymology, and suddenly it says it's not hostile, but it comes from the word animus. And anyone who's played, what's the game called? Assassin's Creed has probably heard of this. And it just means spirit. You know, they just got the word animus or something. And it just means spirit. So what animosity used to mean is more like you've got a lot of spirit. It's like a woman that's like, and you say, oh, look at her. Well, she's a spirited young woman. You know, if you're not like full of life, I mean, people are intimidated if I just come into the room because I do shit like this. Because that actually shows me how much strength I have. But I mean, this is not simple, but it gives me the strength and the stability to keep making art. Because believe me, being creative is really hard. This is like lifetimes of suffering. This is like Gandalf chasing the Balrog, you know, through like the mines of Moria. You know, and people that are just rushing around with their cars. That guy almost crashed. He almost drove himself to death just because he's like, yeah, I can drive super fast. You know, cars are just for idiots. Those who walk will smile. Dandelions are growing and you do not have time. So now what rhymed was smile and time. Okay, why does it rhyme? Well, if it rhymes for you, it's okay, you know. If you do have an interest in making money with writing poetry, then never sell yourself. Always do what you feel. Trust your feeling. You know, otherwise it's worthless. You have to suffer through it, you know. Otherwise it's just worthless. And I think that's all I had. So, I just like making experiences, but I also, there are things where I have admitted defeat. Because I realize I can like do a lot and a lot and a lot, but at some point it's just enough. And so now we'll probably turn off the camera and possibly pee, maybe take a bit of rest, and then just continue. You know, if somebody would come now and ask me if he could, you know, take me with his car, I would just simply refuse. Because you're not gonna help me. You know, people think they help you if they offer you a ride. No. I need to do this by myself. Electric scooters, you know, they just make you more weak. They just make you more weak. And people just don't get it, you know, how weak they've become. With all these gimmicks. Fucking idiots. You know, and that's just... Yeah! Besser laufen! In 20 Jahren wünschst du dir, du hättest es getan. You see, people know it. You know, they say now I'm having a good time, but they're actually bored. So sometimes I tell people this. Keep going, because you're not gonna stay beautiful. You're not gonna stay young unless you actually work for that. You have to toughen up. You have to be like, you know, still are, you know, you have to keep that maiden in you. You have to keep it safe. And that's my message. All I have to do is stand here. I'm a representation of myself, you know. There's almost nothing, you know, nobody can replace me. And that's what people started to realize. Nobody can replace me because I've gone too far. You know, I dove too deep. And who are you gonna look for stability towards? Like, so I think it's enough. The message is your poetry is an image of yourself, and that's basically what it is. Poetry is an image of yourself, and that's what you're trying to express. And that's what I have been working with, basically myself. I see myself as also like a little child that has been neglected, rejected, and treated like shit. And now I have to get back to myself. So writing poetry is also working through the insecurity, but you also just want to see for yourself. But what you always have to remember, no matter how awesome your creations are, this is nothing in relation to nature. And that will keep you humble, because any mountain will last longer than your poetry. No matter how good it is, any mountain, you know, nature is true creation. You just marvel at the beauty, right? And that's all one can ask for if he has a loving heart that is prone to suffering. Just look for beauty and keep going.